Whip Filippi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Craven said that 80% of our constituents support this until they find out what's in it. We put a name like the Protect Rhode Island Families Act, and it sounds good. And I think pretty much all of us, if there's a true domestic abuser abusing a domestic partner, a spouse, a girlfriend, or a family member, I think a lot of us would support the notion in this bill. But this bill goes a lot further than those who are in a substantive dating relationship. It extends to anyone who cohabitates with each other. And then it takes away the court's discretion as to whether to remove the Second Amendment rights of individuals. The court shall remove firearms from anyone restrained in district court, anyone restrained in family court, and anyone convicted of a crime of domestic violence. Let's start with the restraining orders. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the standard for restraining orders is not beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the standard for a criminal conviction. It's not clear and convincing evidence. It's a mere preponderance of the evidence that the court needs to find to restrain someone in district court or in family court. And then if they find by a preponderance of the evidence that that person should be restrained, the court has absolutely no discretion. It must take away that person's Second Amendment rights. Many of us in this room have fought against mandatory minimums for a long time. This is a mandatory minimum. A mandatory minimum removal of a fundamental constitutional right. So let's look at, it's a long bill, so let's start in the beginning. Let's start with the district court restraining orders for domestic abuse. As I said, it applies to cohabitants. It does not require you to be in a substantive dating relationship. It could be two roommates. One roommate could throw a book at another roommate. That other roommate could run to district court, and if the court finds that the person attempted to cause physical harm, then the court would have no discretion but to take away the person's Second Amendment rights. When we go to family court, it's the same standard as above, attempting to cause physical harm or placing another in a fear of imminent physical harm. These are very vague standards. They're easy standards to meet on a preponderance of the evidence. And now, when we deal with criminal convictions, we have to have beyond a reasonable doubt, a finding of beyond a reasonable doubt, but it now moves misdemeanors into the category of convictions that could have your Second Amendment rights, actually that must have your Second Amendment rights taken. Disorderly conduct is now one. It must involve some type of attempted use of force or threatened use of a dangerous weapon. I'll give you an example. Two roommates, because this applies to people who cohabitate, one could be drunk and take a swing at their roommate. And if the cops come, find that person committed simple assault on a cohabitant, they have to take away the person's firearms for the length of that conviction. And beyond the conviction, actually, until expungement. So I could go on for hours because this is a long bill. The main takeaways: preponderance of the evidence standard, it's very low, no judicial discretion, fundamental rights are getting taken away. It's a mandatory minimum. And we mostly don't like mandatory minimums unless it applies to guns. So it's a big problem. I'm sure I'll get up again on this bill, but if we were just to limit this to family members and those who are in a substantive dating relationship, I don't think it would be much of a problem. This is far too broad. We need to pull it back. Because there can be a lot of problems that we don't anticipate and a lot of infringements in here that can happen with the application of this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.